4 years, American boys have been fighting and dying in Vietnam. For 12 months, our negotiators have been talking.
Well, I'm running down the road trying to loosen my load. I got 7 women on my mind. 4, they're gonna own me. 2, they're gonna stone me. 1 said she's a friend of mine. Take it easy, take it easy. Don't let the sound of your own wheels drive you crazy. Lighten up while you still can. Don't even try to understand. Just find a place to make your stand. Take it easy. Take it easy, take it easy. Don't let the sound of your own wheels drive you crazy. Come on, baby, don't say maybe. I gotta know if your sweet love is gonna save me.
I'm Jim Ladd, and you have the good taste, the grace, and the luck to be listening to 95.5 KLOS. Good for you, man.
I worked at a radio station in LA. I had hair down to the middle of my back. Here we are in our early 20s. The entire social order of the country was in upheaval. But then something very special happened.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
That day, in front of a black and white TV set, it reached into me, this young hippie radical, just as it reached into everybody that was alive.
There you go. Beautiful.
That's what humanity coming together looks like. And that's what Woodstock did in a smaller way.
The Great Rock Festival is now history. The last of the nearly 500,000 young people have now departed.
But while the music is over, the aftertaste lingers on.
Woodstock was the event that drew our generation together and put a face and numbers to it.
Virtually a city.
The fact that you would pull that many people together and it would be peaceful,
But no violence.
it made a big impression on those in the society that hated us. And let's remember, there were those that hated us. They didn't like hippies.
Hippie eventually was a name that people didn't want to be called because it was a way of packaging them up and dismissing them. But hippie was like a young person, just burgeoning or just opening, just blossoming, somebody who's getting hip. I mean, it was a way of living your life out in the open, being a freak and being unapologetic about who you were. It was going on in Woodstock and immediately was echoed in Laurel Canyon.
Joni Mitchell. She didn't come out to Woodstock, but she wrote the song about it from what she gleaned from other people. And yet, to her credit, it was the song.
By the time we got to Woodstock, we were 500,000 strong, and everywhere
was just trying to understand myself and my world. I used the writing process as a method of understanding, getting closer and closer to the essence. My 20s were full of intense, painful self-discovery. Some truths that I discovered along the way, wherever I could take it from my own personal travail to the universal. Anything good that helped me, I would try to slot into the song to give it some nutrition, so it would transcend self-pity.
I was always very cautious about giving Joan enough room to write. There was no schedule. It was just me trying to recognize when Joni was going into that void, when I say something and she wasn't listening. And she wrote many, many, many songs while we were together. She wrote half of Blue, Ladies of the Canyon. It was a shitty morning, late winter, chilly, rainy, miserable, foggy. I'd taken Joni to breakfast at Art's Deli on Ventura Boulevard, quite close to Laurel Canyon. We were walking after breakfast and we passed an antique store and were looking in the window. Joan saw this small vase that she wanted to buy. It was about 8 or 9 inches high, some hand-painted flowers around one edge, so she bought it. We drive to her house, go through the front door, and I said, "Hey, Joan, why don't I light a fire and you put some flowers in that vase that you bought today?" It's that simple. Joni went out to find some winter flowers to put in this vase that she just bought. That means she wasn't at her piano, but that means that I was.
I'll light the fire. You place the flowers in the vase that you bought today. Staring at the fire for hours and hours while I listen to you play your love songs all night long for me.
People would say when me and Joan walked into a room, it lit up the room. We brought out the best in each other.
Come to me now, to me rest your head.
In the Laurel Canyon scene, we were at the very center of this beautiful bubble of creativity and friendship and sunshine and sex and drugs and music.
Our house is a very, very, very fine house with 2 cats in the yard. Life used to be so hard. Now everything is easy 'cause of you.
Joan, I don't think ever has really had another relationship like Graham. Graham was as close as it ever came to her actually loving somebody on an ongoing basis. She probably nearly stuck with him forever, and I don't think she ever even considered it with any of the rest of us.
It was a telegram, and it only said, "If you hold sand too tightly in your hand, it will run through your fingers." And that was a shame, but that's the way things are.
Boys and girls have a good time together.
Be my friend or be my
girl. That's the way we've been doing it. We changed it this time.
Yeah, but the rhythm has changed, guys. It doesn't sound like
Mamas and Papas, we were only together for 2.5 years. Then that all changed.
Being successful, we've all developed our own ways of life here in Los Angeles, and we don't affect one another as creatively as we did when we were all dependent upon one another, emotionally and whatnot.
After a while, you don't want to see those same 3 people day in and day out all of your life. It starts to wear on you. We decided that we didn't want to continue working together. Everybody had ambitions to do other things. Cass wanted to be a soloist more than anything.
She saw herself as a hip Barbra Streisand.
The music that my mom chose for herself, that she did as a solo artist, she felt passionately about really positive subject matter. My mom was loving and warm and inviting, big hugs. She loved to be around her friends. She loved to have a full house when people would make music. Graham called her the Queen of the Canyon.
In Laurel Canyon, her house was like at the center of everything, open 24 hours a day, a very wide circle of friends. But John and I left Laurel Canyon, moved to Bel Air, 3 Rolls Royces in the garage. We were hippies, but we were rich hippies. There was no question about that. We'd been so innovative. But we had become the establishment.
I was continuing the Byrds as a franchise, kind of like Coca-Cola or something. David Crosby showed up at my house and said, you know, some of the songs you guys are doing are okay, but some of them aren't. And I had to agree with him. There was a mediocre element in what the Byrds had become. We'd gone out on the road as a 3-piece band. It just wasn't good, wasn't happening. We were looking for somebody to fill in for David because there was no rhythm player. Chris Hillman met Graham Parsons and invited him over to our rehearsals. Graham came in and played a little country music. I thought, the guy's got talent, we can work with him. I didn't know it, but he was about to morph into George Jones in a rhinestone suit.
I convinced the Byrds that they should be doing country music instead of trying to write their own Bob Dylan material. Chris had been trying to say something like that all along, but wasn't sure that Byrds would be out of a job.
Graham Parsons came along and he really understood the real music. All this wonderful stuff out of California along with the Nashville 50s and 60s country music.
Graham Parsons' love of country music was infectious. He loved it so much that he sold us on it. I went to Nudi's, the rodeo tailor, and got some cowboy clothes. And we recorded an entire country album, The Sweetheart of the Rodeo. It was the first time a commercially successful rock band had done country music. Other people had dabbled in it.
We all had trouble getting anybody to believe that you could make bread with country music.
Graham was a nice guy. He was a lot of fun. We'd drink beer and play pool, and he was like a good old boy. It was a good time. He got to know the Rolling Stones. He and Keith Richards became really tight, and he always wanted to hang out with Keith.
He was around for 6 months. He left the Byrds, and I got a little antsy then. I wanted to do something else, as David had the year before.
So I left the Byrds, and Graham and I started the Flying Burrito Brothers in 1969.
But that won't keep you warm at night, 'cause I'm the one who showed you how to do the things you're doing now. He may feel all your charms.
We wanted to do this young, hip country band and base it around a Bakersfield type sound with a little R&B. Now this is where Graham taught me a lot of music.
At the dark end of the street.
I thought I was pretty well up on most of my R&B and blues, but he started picking up these records and turning me on to people I'd never heard of.
Where we don't belong. Living in darkness to hide our wrong. You and me at the dark end of the street. You and me. I know that time's gonna take its toll. We'll
This is now 1969. I'd been in 2 groups already in LA, and the Flying Burrito Brothers were on the same label. So we would see each other on the A&M studio lot, and they invited me to join, to play guitar. And I happily did that because I thought that the Burritos could do something.
Back then, I would go on tour and I would leave the door open because our friends would come in and stay there. They'd clean the house and stock the refrigerator. I'd leave money in the drawer. There was no thievery or anything. We came back from touring once, and there's Bobby Beausoleil sitting on my floor playing a guitar. I'm glad to see him. Bobby Beausoleil was in the Grassroots, which was our group just before we became Love. He was just the sweetest kid. We sit down and chat, and I noticed the door to my bedroom is closed. So I said, is somebody in there? He said, yeah, my girlfriend Sadie, she's asleep. A few minutes later, this thing comes out of my bedroom, this horrible cadaverous looking thing that smelled awful. She had been in my bed, now I'm upset. I said, man, who the hell is this? And he said, oh, this is Sadie, she's with me. We live together in the Spawn Ranch. These people are friends and they have this utopian lifestyle. So he starts telling me and he's romanticizing it. I said, cool, it sounds good. Maybe one day I'll come up and visit you guys. And he says, I don't think that's good. Charlie, you know, is kind of racist. I said, so why are you hanging out with a bigot? And he says, well, I better go because Charlie's gonna be upset if he knows that I came by to visit you. Well, I thought, dude, if this guy is going to be upset that you came by and visited somebody that you've known for years, maybe you ought to get away from him. He kind of laughed.
They called themselves the Family. Young girls, supposedly under the spell of a bearded Svengali, the mystical hippie clan despised the straight affluent society. Friday night in Los Angeles, a movie actress and 4 of her friends were murdered, and the circumstances were lurid.
This was at the home of movie director Roman Polanski, and it was his wife, Sharon Tate, who was one of the victims.
You have any kind of an idea who might have done it? Do you have any kind of APBs out, any suspects at all?
No. The first 2 suspects after the murders at the Sharon Tate house were these 2 guys I knew. In the paper, the police were looking for them. They went and turned themselves in immediately and said, wait, whoa, whoa, whoa. It was frightening in LA then.
A short time later, not far away, a middle-aged couple was found murdered in similar circumstances.
Lino LaBianca, a supermarket owner, and his wife had both been stabbed to death. Hoods had been placed over the heads of both victims.
There's a killer on the road. His brain is squirming like a toad.
We were in this beautiful bubble, and those murders put a pin right in that bubble and it exploded. 8 people butchered in the night. It was too close, too real.
It's a quarter mile from my house. I went out and bought a shotgun. I didn't own a gun until then.
Prior to Manson, in Laurel Canyon, if I saw a hitchhiker, I would always stop and say, hey man, get in the car, sure, I'll take you up the canyon. But then after the murders, you had to stop and think, well, wait a minute, he looks like a cool guy, but how do I know he's not gonna reach around and slit my throat while we're driving up the canyon? I mean, I actually had those thoughts, you know?
I had been to that house several times with David Crosby, because just before Sharon Tate lived there, Terry Melcher, who had produced The Birds, lived at that house, and everybody was familiar with the house. He'd have parties occasionally.
Terry Melcher subleased that house to Roman and Sharon. So people thought the target could be Melcher.
I answered the front doorbell. There were 2 detectives. Do you know anybody who would want to kill you? And I said, well, no.
He said, well, did you ever meet a fellow named Charles Manson? I said, Charles Manson? The guy who plays the guitar and all the girls sing in the background?
Manson was one of many disgruntled young people who tried to get his music recorded, and happened to be a crazy guy who took a lot of drugs and had a following.
Two of the girls who worked on that scene, who were there, I went to high school with. The Manson murders were close to everybody.
We found out later that Bobby Beausoleil, he had killed somebody. Nobody could imagine that he would be involved in that.
Suddenly hippies were not harmless anymore. Hippies became dangerous. When Manson happened, all of a sudden, every hippie was looked at as possibly psycho killer. Who knows what drugs have done to these kids?
Because of Graham Parsons' friendship with the Stones, the Burritos were invited to play at this huge concert. The Stones' answer to Woodstock. All these young people were coming from all over the country to go to this free thing.
Our day started out bad. It was cold, way out in that Altamont raceway.
We played it because Garcia had called Crosby and said, "Do you want to join the Grateful Dead? We're going to do this thing down at the raceway here." We said, "Sounds like a good idea. We'll go."
I was against Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young being on the bill. I said, I don't think you should go. If you want to go against me, I'm not going. The Hells Angels were going to be doing all the security, and people applauded like that was a cool thing. The Rolling Stones had no clue. They didn't live in California. They were visitors. They romanticized the Angels. They were tattooed and rode bikes and were outlaws. The Rolling Stones didn't know what came with that reputation and how it was built. That was the only Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young show I ever missed.
Red Cross truck.
Excuse me, which way is the stage? I'm wading through the crowd. Good Lord, the Hells Angels are just crazy. They were like Vikings ready to raid the monastery.
We're Potter like you. Hey.
CSNY's coming off stage, and David says, "Be careful, pay attention. I'm getting out of here." I said, "Really?" He says, it's not a good deal." The Burritos, to our credit, got up and calmed everybody down. It's a different kind of music.
Well, I pulled out of Pittsburgh, rolling down the Eastern Seaboard. Got my diesel wound up and she's a-running like never before. There's a speed trap ahead, all right, but I don't see a drop inside. 6 days on the road and I'm gonna make it home tonight. 6 days on the road and I'm gonna make it home tonight.
But I could feel it, the tension, the darkness. Something wasn't right. Before that last note on the bass stopped ringing, I had unplugged, put that thing in the case, and I got out of there.
And calling people flower children and this and that. Some of them people was loaded on some drugs that it's just too bad we wasn't loaded on, because they come running off the hill yelling, "Hey!" But when they jumped on an angel, they got hurt.
This is Stefan Ponick, KSAN Radio, San Francisco.
You know what? They got.
Someone was stabbed to death in front of the stage by a member of the Hells Angels. Nothing's confirmed on that.
In the end, it was the antithesis of Woodstock. People got run over, 4 people died.
That was the end of the 60s. And the assassinations, Vietnam, it had finally come full circle into this dark, dark abyss.
The President of the United States has just announced that a new attack into Cambodia was launched this evening by United States armed force.
Kent State University in Ohio has had campus violence for 3 nights. The students were protesting the American invasion of Cambodia. The National Guard was called in.
The guardsmen have fired 61 shots. 4 students, 2 of them bystanders, are dead.
Kent State and more than 400 other institutions go on strike. The president says Americans face a crisis that could threaten the very survival of the nation.
Neil saw the news about the girl laying there, her friend bending over her. That night, he wrote the song. The next night, they recorded it.
Tin soldiers and Nixon's coming. We're finally on our own. This summer I hear the drumming. 4 dead in Ohio.
I drove the record over to B. Mitchell Reed, the big DJ on FM radio in Los Angeles, and he played it that night. Neil was so moved he couldn't help himself, and the rest of the guys were right there.
Found her dead on the ground. How can you run when you know?
Our job is to take you on little emotional voyages, make you boogie sometimes, make you sad sometimes, happy sometimes. Every once in a while, it's our job to be a witness. If your country starts shooting its own children while they're protesting, exercising a constitutional right, unarmed and on their own college campus,
Soldiers are cutting us down.
that would be one of those times when you have to be a witness. And we were.
There was a very large shift. People were up in arms about the Vietnam War. They didn't like Nixon, Kent State, killing our kids because they have the God-given right to protest what their government was doing in their name. It shifted tremendously.
When I was in college, there was no separation between the issues of the day and the music that galvanized souls and brought people to not just march, but to change their minds. And singing songs about peace and love, that sounds corny, but that's what needed to happen in the war-torn era.
The only outlets that we had for information were the press, television, radio, and concerts. Musicians felt that they could get the word out of a different opinion.
Find the cost of freedom buried in the ground.
The Southern California sound was gentle, yet rockin'. It was acoustic, yet electrified. And then there was the Doors. The Doors gave us the Southern California sound after dark.
Blood in the streets in the town of New Haven. Blood stains the roofs and the palm trees of Venice. Blood in my love in the terrible summer. Bloody red sun of fantastic LA.
The music can't help but reflecting things that are happening around it. The mood I get from most of it is kind of a heavy, gloomy feeling.
Blood is the rose of mysterious union.
I'd like to do a song or a piece of music that's just a pure expression of joy.
Love Street, that's one where I had the music and he just came up with those words.
She lives on Love Street.
His girlfriend Pam had just moved into that place up above the country store there.
She has a house.
She has a house and garden. I would like to see what happens.
To see what happens.
There's a store where the creatures meet. That is the Canyon Country Store, the heart of Laurel Canyon.
I see you live on Love Street. There's the store where the creatures meet. I wonder what they do in there.
First time I saw Laurel Canyon, there was a full-scale hippie infestation taking place at the Canyon store. It was exciting to see that many people, that profusion of different styles of freakdom. I would come into Hollywood and Laurel Canyon every chance I got after that. Laurel Canyon was a place that gave you the permission to ask who you were, to find out what this life held for you, and not be scrambling for some regimented job in a regimented society.
I would like to see what happens.
That was the creative lightning that was going on between people.
Jackson and I, we used to hang out a lot, not doing anything special. I always had my camera with me. In those days, it wasn't competitive. It wasn't like, you know, we got a single and you didn't. People were really encouraging each other. Go for it, do the best you can. Can't wait to hear your new song. It was great.
You go play in a bunch of different people's houses. David Crosby would show up.
Kid came in. He was way too pretty. And I said, "Hi, kid. What's your name?" He said, "Jackson." I said, "Sing me a song." And he sang me Adam. And I said, "Oh, shit. Here comes the next wave."
Though Adam was a friend of mine, I did not know him well.
I was writing songs and playing an open mic night at the Troubadour. That was a fun hang, too, because you wind up waiting around for about 4 hours with a bunch of songwriters on the street, you know, just like waiting for this window to open. I met a lot of friends there.
Now the story's told that Adam jumped, and I'm thinking that he fell.
Eventually they told me, "Look, kid, you don't have to sign up anymore. If you're gonna come, just come."
Jackson's music just really touched something. It was very emotional, but in a quiet, calm way.
There were all these great second wave songwriters all hanging out together at the Troubadour bar, but no one had recorded yet. Everyone was on an equal footing.
I was in this duo, Long Branch Penny Whistle, with this guy named J.D. Souther. We started going to the Troubadour all the time, 5 nights a week. Out there in the bar, I would sit with people and I would ask questions. Gene Clark would come in and I'd talk with him about songwriting and ask him why the Birds break up. The next day, the guys from Crosby, Stills, and Nash, who writes the songs, where do they rehearse? I was trying to collect as much information as possible that could help me get to where I wanted to be. We had heard about this guy, Jackson Browne, and he'd been playing the same clubs we had, and we struck up a friendship. I learned so much from Jackson about songwriting. That was the beginning.
I met Jackson in 1970, before my first album came out. I loved his music.
The thing about Jackson is that he's been a real established songwriter since the time I was about 17 or 18. I mean, I heard about his
Since
legend.
the time we ran into each other a year ago.
Oh, we played before either one of us had had an album.
He found out about me and loved what I did, and we've been like brother and sister ever since. It was a fantastic time to be young and free, able to party, able to sleep around if you wanted to. Everybody lived within 10 minutes of each other, and everybody was up late at night. We all could go down to the Troubadour and just run into a set of people that were there.
Well, I've been out walking. I don't do that much talking these days. These days.
Crosby told me about this really hip young agent who, unlike most of the agents and managers, was one of us. The guy that can do business with the best of them. He's really smart and he's honest.
It was incredible to be at the nexus of all that was happening. Very fertile period of time for songwriters and singers and musicians.
Geffen was only 24 or something. I was about 18. So I sent Geffen a demo. I didn't get any reply.
And I had a lover.
David called me and he says, "Elliot, I'm going to play you something that's one of the most moving things I've ever heard."
These days.
You could hear him sobbing on the other end of the phone.
Now if I seem to be afraid to live the life that I have made in song.
Eventually got a call back from Geffen asking me to come in and meet. And when I met him, within about 20 minutes, he said, okay, I'll manage you. You will? It was like a dream.
Elliot Roberts and I, we were coming across a lot of new artists that big record companies weren't interested in.
We knew songs and we knew artists, but we couldn't get a deal for Jackson. No one wanted it, so we decided we better start our own company for artists that we think are great. Between Joni and Crosby, Stills and Nash, we felt we were dealing with the cream of the crop. Let's do it ourselves. And we ended up forming Asylum.
Doctor, my eyes have seen the years and the slow parade of fears without crying. Now I want to understand. I have done all that I could to see the evil and the good without hiding. You must help me if you can. Doctor, my eyes.
Jackson got a lot of airplay because of Dr. My Eyes, and his records were hit records.
To leave them open for so long.
Geffen Roberts' management, they were brilliant at selecting acts, and they had their pick of all these young acts that were coming of age then. They were really good at promoting them and really good at making it all work. But it was hard to make a living as a musician if you didn't have hits. And the bands I was in weren't paying enough really to make it.
Will you welcome the Flying Burrito Brothers? It's a lazy day. I'm down with nothing else to do. It's a crazy day. I got a thing that I wanna try with you. Now, baby, don't go away. Please don't spoil my lazy.
I did the third album with the Burritos, but I was then thinking of leaving that band. I had to work. Our A&R guy produced the Stone Ponies with Linda Ronstadt, and he started hiring me to work on sessions. I met Linda. I later was in her band.
Got my traveling shoes. Got on my traveling shoes. I got my traveling shoes, and I ain't gonna lose. I believe I got the walking blues. I am walking down the line. Well, I'm walking down the line. Well, I'm walking down the line. Feel me a fine tale about the troubled
Linda, you play country music with a difference. That's wild. How did you get interested in country music originally?
Well, I'm a country girl originally. I grew
would
up
not
in
have guessed
Tucson,
that.
Arizona.
I see. I wonder if you introduce the guys that are backing you up.
I loved the Southwest. I thought it was the greatest. But I knew that I couldn't work in Tucson like I could work in Los Angeles. I was into folk music in those days. The Ash Grove and the Troubadour being the two main places. To me, that was like artistic Shangri-La.
Laurel Canyon. I lived up there for a while. We lived up Kirkwood. A lot of people lived together in the same house. It was just the people you knew from the Troubadour, gigging musicians trying to pay the rent. You'd play music and you'd take your guitar, put on a harmony. It was just going on, and it was just a part of what you did. Nobody was famous then. We were just people that hung out there.
It had this air about it that it was exclusive, but not exclusive to wealth. It was exclusive to spirit. And you'd think, God, if I could only live in Laurel Canyon, it'd be so great to live in Laurel Canyon. Then you find out, oh, I can.
There's too much time to sun yourself.
First time I saw Linda was when she played the Troubadour with the Stone Ponies.
About your old friends, you think how hard you try.
like you were seeing a goddess. The voice was so beautiful. We dated for 2 weeks, and then she said, "Steve, do you often date women and not try to sleep with them?"
After Linda was in the Stone Poets, Steve Martin would open for Linda at the Troubadour.
Ready to roll? My name is Steve Martin. I'll be out here in just a moment, and we're going to start. We'll be starting in just a few moments, just waiting for the drugs to take effect, and then we'll be going. Okay.
He was a huge hit.
You know what Is this on? Is this mic on?
We watched every set he did. We were just huge fans. He did some very crazy stuff there.
It's a perfect instrument for a comedian because it's real dumb. When you're playing the banjo, everything's okay. It's like, "Hey, Steve, your house is burning down." Oh, sing along.
We loved having him as an opener because he could kill the audience, but without getting in the way of your music thing. Linda was a singer technically, a song stylist emotionally, a storyteller with her voice, one of the most iconic voices of our generation.
Frank Sinatra never wrote any songs. Elvis Presley never wrote any songs. Neither did Linda Ronstadt. But she had the knack for picking out instinctively what songs were going to be good for her.
But I tried, and I tried,
It was all about what she could do with a song. Every songwriter wanted to get something to her. And we're very lucky when she did because she brought so much to the party. She took over those songs.
Linda just walked past me in the Troubadour one night, and I said, "Hi, I'm John David. I think you should cook me dinner." And she said, "Okay." Gave me her phone number, and I called her.
We lived together about 1.5 years. We used to have a really good time singing together. We used to have a really good time listening to music together. I'd hear him writing something down the hall, and I'd go down and listen, and I'd say, "I really like that. Teach it to me."
I had a little piano room in the back of the house. I kept getting halfway through Faithless Love. She came padding down the hall and said, "I think it's really beautiful, and I'd love to record it."
faithless love.
When Linda says she wants to record something, it's very encouraging.
Raindrops falling on a broken.
It was like having tailor-made songwriter, you know? We'd go through some horrible row, and he'd write a song about it, and I'd sing it. It was great.
And the night blows in like a cold, dark wind. Faithless love, like a river flows.
Long Branch Penny Whistle here. I suppose you wonder what that name meant.
The first Long Branch Penny Whistle album didn't exactly set the world on fire. They wouldn't make a second record with our material. The point is, we're songwriters. We're trying to learn to write songs. So we just said we're not going to record, and we sat around, played a few gigs, and just waited to see what would happen.
JD and I, we got up there and we did our little Long Branch Penny Whistle / Everly Brothers thing.
Jackson Browne took me over to David Geffen's house one day. I played him a couple of songs.
I told JD and Glenn that they needed to split up, that Long Branch Penny Whistle wasn't going to work. And I told Glenn that he wasn't good enough to be a solo artist. He needed to put together a band.
I thought Glenn was so good, you know? I mean, I just thought he was great. And I told him that he was a hot shot. I said, "You're going to do something someday, but in the meantime, you're starving to death. Why don't you come and play music with me? We'll have a great time." And then, of course, I was walking through the Troubadour during the Hootenanny, and this band Shiloh got up and did my exact version of Silver Threads and Golden Eagles. Note for note off the record. And I just went, "What?"
I heard the drummer and I thought he was really good.
I was lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time.
Linda and her manager, John Boylan, they thought it might be cool to have a singing drummer. But I had to audition. And I auditioned at a house in Laurel Canyon, just off Kirkwood.
And he said, look, you want to go on the road with Linda Ronstadt for $200 a week? And I said, sure. And that was that.
I got a feeling for the blues, oh Lord, so baby say goodbye. And I don't know what I do, I'll do it, say goodbye.
Even though they were a backup band for Linda, everyone knew that Don and Glenn were writing great songs. That second wave, people who came here to be successful, started to move up. By this time, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young was the biggest American band. They were at their height.
We got so big so fast. There were thoughts of people wanting to be Elvis or something.
We were all dealing with the first mad rush of real big-time success. It made for some interesting perspectives, let's put it that way.
We structured our shows that we would do solo sets. I'd do two, David would do two, Stephen would do two.
Talking one day, and I kind of walked out there thinking, oh, they're all in one group. I'll get a group shot. So I walked up to take this picture. Well, I didn't realize that their little meeting was to have a little bumper dust, what they call Peruvian marching powder, which had reared its ugly head in our beautiful God's Herb community.
We smoked a lot of pot because we liked getting high. It made us feel creative. But cocaine would keep that feeling for hours instead of just fleetingly.
Everybody was doing it. People were wearing little gold spoons around their necks. I mean, they weren't ashamed of the fact that they were doing drugs.
Cocaine, methamphetamine, speed, all the fake energy stuff. You think it's going to help you ride into the night or stay with an idea, and maybe for a while it does. The physical consequences of doing those drugs eventually just compounds, and you don't know it because you're high.
Drug use was like a windy little road, quite pretty at the onset. Trees and flowers and birds singing. And you can't see where the road goes over the cliff. Only thing is, it does. First people who gave me cocaine said, it's not addictive, don't worry. It was a pretty disorganized time in our lives. Success had already had some adverse effects on us. We were all feeling very separate.
After a while, it became edgy, colder, less truthful.
No, we can't get a blend that way, and not only that, but we can't rehearse it so that it all makes sense to get it. See, I can't do it, man.
I'm not gonna cop out an inch to fear. And you walked out 2 fucking days in a row, you fucking hypocrite. You piss me off.
Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young soon ended. Success breeds change. For everybody. For anybody.
I need someone to love me. I want someone to understand.
I was on the road 9 or 10 months. I couldn't wait to get back to California.
Won't have to put himself above me when he loves me like a man.
I sailed into Laurel Canyon, rented a place, and I was going to make my 3rd album with Little Feat. And that's pretty much who I hung out with.
When I finally moved up into the canyon, I was already a member of Little Feat. That was the 70s. People like Bonnie Raitt were living there. More and more people had discovered Laurel Canyon, which is kind of funny because Laurel Canyon, way back when, was home to Tom Mix, and Houdini had a house up there. And then Zappa and all the different variations of the Mothers. Lowell George was a member of the Mothers. until he started Little Feat. The one thing Lowell told me when I joined the band, he says, rule number one, there's no rules.
Oh, give me a break, Lowell. Lowell George plays in a band called Little Feat, and he sings. He's the singer and the guitar player and the writer. And for those of you who can't see, he's cute, too.
Coming out to LA and starting out in the early 70s, it really was a cross-pollination. It was the greatest gift of that era.
When you get home, baby, write me a few of your lines.
Country music, blues, R&B, all intermingled, and it became just part and parcel of the music that we loved. We didn't have to put it in a box.
Write me a few of your lines. That'll be consolation. Lord, honey, on my worried mind.
Little Feat was like me, more roots-oriented. The kind of music that they did was R&B-ish, blues rock. We straddled genres.
1, 2, testing. 1. Say hello. Yeah, okay.
Little Feat, they were extraordinary musicians, incorporated rhythm and blues and Delta blues, boogie-woogie into rock and roll. Some of it was radio friendly and some of it wasn't.
Hello, give me missing persons. They said, what is it that you need? I said, whoa, I need her so. They said, you got to stop your bleeding.
How do you identify yourselves in terms of the American musical scene?
It's hard to say. We all write songs in the group, and every song takes a different direction, so it's really hard to pigeonhole the kind of music we play.
Long distance of love.
We were pushing boundaries, but from a press standpoint, it was difficult for them to explain just who the hell we were.
We played how we felt, if they come up with a certain lick and everybody contributed their part to it, then the music just came out like that. It's the fist of funk. That was my name for it.
Why didn't Little Feat catch fire? They are some of the best musicians on the planet.
I really can't get up in the morning and think about the goals of being successful, because what is success? I mean, it certainly isn't money. Doing something that you really like doing as a profession is really success to me. I guess I'm doing it. So I feel good about that.
This was a time when music and art was everything. You lived for it, it was your life, and the prosperity that it brought came second. It was more important to make good music than it was to make it as a celebrity.
It's hard to draw a line between aspiring to success and aspiring to artistry. For example, Glenn Frey, who achieved artistry. I remember sitting with him, and he said, "Oh, I want to be a rock and roll star so bad."
Glenn had always had a plan for a band. His gig with Linda was only temporary as far as he was concerned. He had this very detailed plan about the band he wanted to start and what kind of music we would do. He recruited me, and he and I became partners in that endeavor. After we got done with Linda's tour, we went back to Los Angeles and started the recruitment process for the Eagles.
Glenn and Don both wrote at that time, so they started talking about putting a band together, and we told them they should get Randy Meisner to play bass and Bernie Ledden, guitar player. And they thought that was a good idea.
I had a bluegrass background, I had a folk background, pop music background, rock and roll top 40, but I had never put it all together in one thing until I joined the Eagles.
It was like people in love. It was the greatest thing to see that band when they first formed.
We were very into the country rock sound, groups like Poco and the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, Buffalo Springfield, the Byrds.
We were doing the same kind of cross-pollination that those other bands had been doing, but with tougher rock. One of the first songs we wrote was Witchy Woman. I wrote the music and Don wrote the lyrics.
Raven hair and ruby lips, sparks fly from her fingertips.
Our Texas artist friend Boyd Elder had a big art gallery opening in Venice. All of his friends came. Most of the people lived in Laurel Canyon. Everybody was there. Joni and Cass and most of the Turtles. Jackson Browne and David Geffen. The Eagles, they only had a few songs, so they kept singing Witchy Woman over and over, and everybody was dancing.
We weren't really fit for public presentation at that point. But we were just happy to be hanging out with that crowd. It was a great scene because all the people trying to write songs and trying to make records were very supportive of one another. Jackson Browne was a mentor to all of us because he had broken through first. And we all aspired to be what he was, to write like that and have that kind of insight. Jackson had started Take It Easy and then abandoned it, but he had played it for Glenn at some point. When we were about to record our first album, Glenn went to Jackson and said, "I'd like to try to finish it." Jackson said, "Sure, have at it."
Well, I'm standing on a corner in Winslow, Arizona. It's such a fine sight to see. It's a girl, my lord, in a flatbed Ford, slowing down to take a look at me. Well, come on, baby, don't say baby. I gotta know if your sweet love is gonna save me. Well, come on, baby, don't say baby. I gotta know if your sweet love is gonna save me.
Geffen pushed Take It Easy pretty hard because Asylum Records was his new label. Got in the top 20. We had a lot of exposure with our first album, 3 hit singles.
Oh, I think they were very ambitious, particularly Glenn. Glenn wanted to have a hit band.
I wanted limousines and adoring fans and girls. There's no university that could have ever prepared me for any of the things I needed to learn.
Hi. Hey. Hi. How you doing? Hi. Hi, Jim. Oh, not again. Hey, we gotta go.
When we first started the Doors, each person was equally important. As it progressed, Jim became the center of attention. Morris and Morris and Morris and...
Wait a while, don't get out yet. Oh, man.
So he was the one who had to live with it. It was extremely difficult for me. That's why he really started to drink as much as he did.
Come on, girl.
Morrison always had a wild streak, always a little crazy. A few too many drinks and he was right over the edge.
Get together.
He touched the authorities in a way that I've never seen anyone touch the authorities.
Some outlaws live by the side of a lake. No minister's daughters in love with the snake who lives in a well by the side of the road. Wake up, girl.
It's a little nerve-wracking sometimes.
But I thought he'd be one of those drunks who lives to be 85 years old.
We had an incident, perhaps was a turning point in the Doors' career.
I ain't talking about no revolution. I'm
It was a horrible show, I have to say. Jim was so drunk he couldn't sing right.
You're all a bunch of slaves.
And Jim said, "What do you want from me?
Tell you what you're gonna do.
How about if I show you my cock?"
He probably would have pulled it out had Ray not told our equipment guy, Vince, "Don't let him do it, don't let him do it."
We have taken out 2 warrants for Jim Morrison for indecent exposure, for the use of obscene languages during his performance.
Jim, you have anything to say?
I'm admitting the charge of the public profanity, but I'm denying the exposure charge. I told the audience, realize that you're not really here to listen to some fairly good musicians. You know, you're here for something else, and why not admit it?
Is a trial date set?
Hey man, you're putting me on a bummer. Let's get on to another subject, all right? It's a rainy day in LA talking about all this horrible nonsense.
We were supposed to go on the rest of the tour. We heard, oh shit, the tour's canceled.
What do you plan to do in the future, as far as the band goes and everything else?
Well, we have another album to do. We'll start cutting in a couple weeks.
Well, I'm the crawling king snake, and I rule my dear. Well, I'm the crawling king snake, and I rule my dear. Oh, give me what I want, ain't gonna crawl no more.
We were finishing up the album LA Woman. He said, "I'm going to Paris." I said, "Whoa, what a good idea, man. Get away from all of this rock and roll thing and become a poet again."
The death of another rock musician was disclosed today, Jim Morrison, lead singer of The Doors. His manager said Morrison died 6 days ago in Paris, either of a heart attack or pneumonia, but the death was kept secret to avoid a sensation. He was buried in Paris in the same cemetery where Balzac and other French immortals lie.
I got a phone call from our manager telling me Jim Morrison is dead. Last thing I was going to believe is Jim Morrison's dead in Paris. He went there to clean up, to dry out. He died 27 and a half, July 3rd, 1971. An outlaw, renegade, wild Dionysian poet. And I miss him.
Most people who make it in the music industry are not prepared. Success can be just as scary as failure, if not scarier. And some people don't actually live through it.
Desperado, why don't you come to your senses? You've been out riding fences for so long now.
I moved to Laurel Canyon in early 1973 into a little house that was on stilts. When the wind would blow, the house would sway. It made me nervous. It was formerly occupied by Roger McGuinn, the co-founder of the Byrds, so I took that as a good omen. And I somehow got an old upright piano in there. I don't know where it came from. That was the year that Glenn and I really started writing songs together. He came to that house. I showed him the little pieces that I had of Desperado.
We started writing Desperado, and we started writing Tequila Sunrise, and the more we started thinking about it, the more this seemed like, well, maybe this is kind of a country rock opera. Write it all about the Old West, why guys became outlaws, the romance of it, the tragedy of it, the fame.
I, like most of the guys in my generation, felt like the Eagles had written Desperado for us. Rock musicians and guitar players were like gunslingers in the Old West.
In our youthful exuberance and cockiness, we tried to make that analogy, yeah. We didn't exactly rob banks, but we did have a similar lifestyle in that we would go from city to city, and we had a life on the road. There was drinking, there was gambling, there were women, so we liked to think of ourselves as being outside the norms of society. And we were, in a sense.
The Desperado album is one of the finest pieces of music ever written, but the album wasn't making it.
We made a concept album which didn't make the record company happy at all. The song Desperado was not a hit for us until Linda Ronstadt recorded it. She gave it wings.
We'd like to introduce someone who was very instrumental in putting our band, the Eagles, together. Would you welcome Linda Ronstadt?
Desperado, why don't you come to your senses? You've been out riding fences for so long now. Oh, you're a hard one, but I know that you got your reasons. These things that are pleasing you will hurt you somehow. Don't your feet get cold in the wintertime? The sky won't snow and the sun won't shine.
There's no question she resurrected that song and helped keep the Eagles away from the sophomore slump.
The Eagles, they kept their circle. That's what I always liked about them most, the loyalty to each other in those early Laurel Canyon years.
The Eagles were not pioneers. The Eagles were settlers. But I do believe that we did a pretty good job of cultivating the land that we settled. We put ourselves into it and made it uniquely our own.
The whole California country rock thing exploded with Crosby, Stills and Nash, Poco, Linda, Jackson, and the Burrito Brothers. But the Eagles kicked it to the next level. It was the dominant musical form of the 70s in this country.
I don't think any of us had any idea how big the tsunami of sales that was coming was going to be.
When we got to the Eagles and the later generations of great bands, the entire business changed.
Things got so big so fast that places like the Troubadour became too small.
What changed was the people went into coliseums to play. We didn't see each other as much. As soon as we went into arenas, we didn't go and see each other.
You feed the machine that is the record business, and the monster wants more. Every artist has a peak, a creative peak, a sales peak, and then comes the pressure of trying to repeat that. You get caught up in this whirling vortex of success and money and fame and pressure.
As people became very, very successful, the camaraderie changed. People started guarding their songs. You didn't want to give up one of your melodies to somebody else. Over time, people started moving out of Laurel Canyon, getting a better place in a better neighborhood. The business started burning people out, and you were overworked on the road so much and played more than you should play.
You managed to keep pretty busy. I know, because we've been trying for 2 years to get you on the show. I wanted to ask you, when you do have any time in that busy schedule of yours, how do you like to spend it best?
Besides playing with my child, which is obvious, I think, for any mother, you know, especially a mother who works.
Yeah.
You know, when you have to spend a little time away, you really relish that time at home.
My mom was a very loving person, but she also traveled a lot.
Cass, now that you're such a giant star in the firmament, is this your life? Is it ever going to change?
Well, I wouldn't like to have to work as much as I'm working now. Nobody wants to work that hard. I'd like to go back to school.
She closed a 2-week, sold-out engagement at the London Palladium. She had stayed up for 40 hours. She went to sleep and had a heart attack in her sleep.
Mama Cass Elliott, the pop star who won fame with a group called the Mamas and Papas, died today in London. She was 33. Miss Elliott was in England for concert and nightclub appearances.
It was a big shock. That, to me, was a big shock. She was a Los Angelino. She was one of us, you know, one of ours. It had a big impact. It just wasn't the same anymore.
Out of that loss, for me personally, came a blessing. My wife, Leah, and I raised Owen after Cass passed away. But the loss of Cass was traumatic, not only for us, it was a huge loss for the music community and the brother and sisterhood that had developed in Laurel Canyon.
Mama Cass, she put a lot of social things into motion and changed people's lives. She was sent by the angels to teach her to all of us, as we all are to each other. When I first picked up a camera, it was as a folk musician, quietly taking pictures, documenting, to learn. Not consciously, but when I saw that first picture on the wall, glowing in color like it was alive, that's when I became a photographer. There's a reason that these people became so well known. They had an amazing talent for life, really. For singing, writing songs, thinking poetically. What is it really about? Why are we here? What is this wonderful experience? What's the best way to live it? And that's Laurel Canyon.
If you believe in God, it's like God said, okay, kids, I'm going to show you what the Garden of Eden was like. And you get to live and play and love. We embraced it all, and it was wonderful.
Laurel Canyon's become a name for a thing. It's really just a myth. Places become focal points for breaking out of convention. What was happening in Laurel Canyon was the universe cracking open and revealing secrets. It was just about a time, the creative awakening.
There are periods in history when there are peaks, and nobody really knows why. Paris in the 30s, the Renaissance in Italy, Los Angeles around 65, 75. Very hard to define it, but the proof's in the pudding. The music's there.
Everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, Everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season